Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing an ink review of an ink from Diamine. It is Saddle Brown, which I have here in the little 30ml plastic bottle. Really interesting ink. Here it is on some card. You can see there that it's a nice sort of dark chestnutty sort of brown with some interesting sort of shading happening there. Nice colour, really nice sort of rich brown there, and the shading is really nice. Now you're not going to get a lot of sheen on this ink. You might get a little bit of shine, but it's not really sheen. But yeah, this is Diamine Saddle Brown. Here is the chromatography. Now you can see where I drew the line. We're left with sort of a grey dark blue, sort of a dark blue-grey I mean, and that sort of seeps up into some lovely oranges and some browns, a little bit of yellow and stuff sort of peeking through there. So there's quite a lot of depth to the chromatography of this ink, which sets it apart, I think, in a lot of ways. So this is Rhodia 80-gram paper, the sort of stock standard. Now I had this in two pens. I've got it here in the TWSBI Eco with a broad nib, and I also had it in my Dryad Pens Moondust, which I have an extra fine Yovo nib on. It's cleaned out now, but this is how it writes with those two pens. So you can see that in the broad nib we get a lot of depth coming through, nice chestnut dark brown and some shading and excellent flow. In the drier extra fine nib, and it is a dry nib and it's one of the reasons I put it in this, the colour is more muted. You can see that it's still quite lovely, but it's sort of a little bit lighter than what we get from the broader nib. The shading is still apparent, but the darker shades are less pronounced. So yeah, nice ink. So I'm going to do a quick water test here. We'll look at it on some other paper, just very quickly while we have it here on the Rhodia. You can see there that nothing comes through. There's no feathering, or there's no feathering at all, in fact. Nice up close there. And there's no bleed. So it's a sort of a pretty well-behaved ink. So I'm going to drop some water on here and move that around a little bit. And then let's look at it on some other papers. Let's start from the bottom up, shall we? So here we have standard, this is Spirax note paper. A little bit of feathering happening there. It's not too bad, but there is a little bit. The colour is a little bit sort of muted again, but you expect that on this paper. This is not fountain pen friendly paper at all. It's not designed to be. And if we look at the reverse there, there's a little bit of bleed coming through, particularly from the broad TWSBI, which is, I would say, medium to wet in terms of, sort of flow. Next we have it on the standard sort of copier paper. This is Reflex 80-gram paper. And actually, it performs pretty well. Decent sort of colour, some shading there. Not much, but a little bit, particularly where the ink is pooling, so like on the E of Eco, just there we get a little bit, but once again a little bit of sort of a bleed coming through occasionally where we get a bit of extra ink put down, but not too bad really. It's pretty good. So it's a well-performing ink, like Diamine do a good job. I really like the Diamine inks. Next we have it on higher paper, which is the Tomoa River paper. This is in a notebook from Standard Bindery. Really nice Tomoa River notebooks. Check them out if you don't know them. Australian sort of company. Ink performs super well here. No feathering, nothing. The shading is a little, yeah, you can see some of that shine that I was talking about. It's not really sheen, but it's shine. The ink shades well. There's no feathering. And on the reverse, the only place we get any sort of bleed through, of course, is where we put down a huge amount of ink for the swab there, but nothing else comes through. There is show through, of course. Tomoa River is not perfect in that respect. It's very light paper. This is 52-gram paper. So it's, you are going to get a show through, but there's no bleed. So this is both the quality of the paper and the ink. Let's now mop up this water test here and see what we've got left behind. So, as you can see, as to be expected after seeing this chromatography, we do get a little bit of sort of this dark grey blue sort of colour still left on the page, which is really handy, because if you got this page wet, and like that was sitting on there for quite a while and it's still quite wet and got quite wet, there's a lot of water on there, what you have written is still perfectly legible. You can see there these numbers are there's absolutely no doubt what they are. So while it's removed the brown from the page, the writing has still remained, which I really, really appreciate. Yes, if you look up there on where it was water, where it sort of got wet but not soaked in, it has moved the colour around a bit, and you can see a little bit there on some of those lines. But for the most part, when the ink has been soaked up off the page, what is left behind is still quite legible. Very good to know. Okay, let's talk through these criteria now. So, sheen, there is none on this ink. It's not a sheening ink. As I said, some shine but not sheen. Shading is good. I think in a medium wetness nib, you might get a little bit more. This board does lay down quite a lot of ink, but as you've seen, there are spots where you do get some beautiful shading from this ink. And in both nibs, it's really quite nice. Actually, you can see the shading on that swab there as well. Shimmer, nope, not one of those inks, and something I'm quite glad about. Wetness and flow is good. Brown inks, or colours in sort of the orange, red, brown sort of range, do tend to be slightly dry, but this is pretty good. As you can see from the dry time, which I'll just jump down to, 40 seconds on rodeo, and with a sort of a relatively wet nib, just for the sake of the exercise, we'll just do, like, we're not talking dry at all, but that's also, part of the ink. We know that these TWSBI pens, if you're writing with a dry ink, then you are going to get a much drier experience. Bleed is fair. So the only time we got bleed was when we pulled a lot of ink. In fact, I'd say that's fair to good in reality. Feathering is good. Really, once again, only feathering on the lowest end paper. Dry time, slow, 40 plus seconds on rodeo, as you can see over here. Cleaning is good. As far as brown inks go, this is absolutely fine. There's no sort of staining or anything like that on other pens or anything like that. So the converter's all cleaned up very nicely, and nothing sort of no crudding up on the nibs or anything like that. Water, as we can say, I'm going to call this actually good, because while we don't maintain a brown color, what we do get is still completely legible. So it's not archive quality, it's not permanent, but if you were writing in your journal and you spilt water on your journal, I think it'd still be okay. So overall, I've given this ink 3 out of 5. Now, this is only based on these criteria alone, because there's no sheen and no shimmer and things like that. These are properties that some people look for in inks, and you're not going to get that here. But what we do get is things like decent water resistance and good performance in terms of bleed and feather and that sort of stuff. My personal score is 3.5. I think it's a nice colour, and it's got good performance on paper, and it feels nice in the pen. And I do really just like this colour. I like brown inks, and this is a really nice coloured one. So that could be 4 realistically. Things like shimmer and sheen aren't properties that I am particularly sort of, I don't need those in my inks, but the things I do look for are good performance and, as I said, nice colour. So this has all of that. So if you're looking for a brown ink, please check out Saddle Brown from Diamine. It's not a fancy ink. It's not a particularly sort of much spoken about ink, but it's a really nice one. So there's lots of browns in the Diamine lineup. You'll probably see a few more. I've got a bunch of these little 30ml bottles to review over the next coming while. I love Diamine inks. So yeah, check this one out if you are looking for a brown. This is a nice sort of chestnut brown with some lovely sort of attributes. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. Please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me. You can comment on any of my videos here. Yeah, you can email me if you've got products you think I should be looking at. Let me know. If you've got a way you'd like to support the channel, get in touch and let's see what we can do. In the meantime, enjoy your pens and your ink, and I'll talk to you later.